You know where we from, we learned a few things. Trials and tribulations turned us into true queens. We sisters, you ain't gotta talk over me. So pull up a chair, let's talk over tea.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yandy Smith Harris. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. Welcome to Talk Over Tea, a show for women in action. We invite you to have a dialogue with us on all things life, love, laughter, and revolution. We will talk over tea, but we will also take you into the action as we uncover societal fails and fights for social justice. So, before we start, I want to introduce you to my girls. First, we have radio entrepreneur influencer Shay Parker. Woo! Next, we have author, advocate, and advocate Jamila T. Davis. After that, we have my girl, CEO Ronnie Brown, who went from mopping the floor to making millions. And last but certainly not least, we have activist and co-founder of Until Freedom, Tamika Mallory. Girls, I don't know about you, but this quarantine is driving me insane. I am ready for this thing to be over. I want to go back outside without a mask on. How y'all all holding up?
Well, girl, I've been all right, in this house trying to just get it all together, putting together a few plans and just, staying focused, being positive. Although it's definitely been a lot of downtime, it's been quality time with family, and that means a lot.
For me, I'm becoming a teacher. I would have never guessed in a million years that I would be a homeschool teacher. I definitely didn't sign up for this. So homeschooling 3 kids has definitely been an interesting part of my quarantine process. So toast to all the moms that are turning into 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade teachers.
Quarantine life for me has been interesting. Most of you know that in March, my mom had a massive stroke. And my mom is an avid dancer. So she's like the dance instructor for multiple dance classes in her local community. And she is now partially paralyzed. And so I've been being a caretaker throughout the quarantine and trying to figure out how not to get her sick. So I couldn't do a lot of things that I would have wanted to do. But I tell you, she said over and over that even though she is partially paralyzed, she's depressed, it hurts and all of that, her family has come together. Like, we're stronger than we've ever been. We're spending more time together. And thankfully, this happened during a time when I'm not traveling all over the country, that I'm actually able to be there. So God works in mysterious ways.
Absolutely.
Now, I have to say that this quarantine has been a blessing in disguise because y'all know I'm so used to being up, moving around, going to the station, doing this, doing that. But I think this quarantine has given me an opportunity to really just slow down and take a breath, strategize about some things. And I mean, honestly, when are we ever going to have a time like this again? Probably never. We're so used to running around. So I just have to be thankful. I'm like, I can't complain. As soon as I catch myself complaining, I'll be like, girl, people out here got it a lot worse than I do. So I just been counting my blessings and trying to stay productive and positive, drinking my tea, because that's what we about to do. Does everybody have their mugs? Yes. So we gotta hop into these hot topics. Now, I miss going out. I really wish I could stand on somebody's couch right now, but I have been having fun at D Nice's quarantine party.
Yes, Hunty.
A lot of fun.
So, the versus battles have been great. Club Quarantine has obviously been great. We were all there and experienced that moment when D Nice reached 100,000 people. It was incredible. And now he's just sort of taken off. There's been a lot of things happening that have made us happy, kept us going. To your point, Jamila, that, at the end of the day, we've been innovative even through the quarantine. However, there's been some serious stuff happening as well. And injustice persists. It doesn't matter whether we're in a quarantine, we could be in the best of spirits, the worst of spirits, whatever's happening, there will always be unfortunate circumstances happening to people of color and particularly to Black people. And I have a real severe and sensitive place in me for the injustices that happen to Black women that do not make the national media in the ways that it should, that just don't get the type of attention that we all should be giving those cases. And so I am, unfortunately, we have to bring our sister, Attorney Lanita Baker, into a conversation today with us, but I'm glad to see that another Black woman is leading the charge to get justice for Breonna Taylor. I'll tell you a little bit about Breonna Taylor. All of you know, I've seen all of you sharing information about her story on your social mediums, but for those people who are not aware, Breonna Taylor, a young woman, was in her home. And by the way, Breonna Taylor is an EMT worker. She was a first responder. So she's getting her rest between working in an environment, in the corona environment, in the COVID-19 environment, and being out there doing real work on the front lines for our people and for everyone, for Americans. And she was in her home with her boyfriend. They were sleeping, and there was clearly some banging on the door and a disturbance that woke them up. At which time, they were asking or calling out, "Who is it? Who is it? Who is it?" And there was no response from those who were really basically intruders in their minds coming into their home. Once Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, Kenny Walker, called the police. So there is a 911 tape that ironically and mysteriously, the local officials do not want us to hear. But there is a 911 tape that shows that Kenny Walker called the police, and he was basically saying, "There's someone here, they're trying to get in our home." He fired a shot at those people who entered their home that, again, they did not know who they were. He fired a shot, he hit an officer in the leg, and the officers returned fire. And we believe, and Attorney Lanita Baker will speak more to the specifics, but we believe over 50 shots had been fired, some of which went through walls, particularly where family was living with their 5-year-old child sleeping in the home. But 8 of those shots hit Breonna Taylor, and they killed her. She died in her home in the middle of the night because people came into her home and threatened their lives, basically. What we found out is that there was a no-knock warrant. And we want to hear from Lanita about, or from Attorney Baker. I've started calling her Lanita because we've become sister girls over this experience, unfortunately, this way. But there was a no-knock warrant. And that means that the police have the ability to come into your home without having to allow you to open the door and have the right type of conversation so that the person is identifying themselves. And I think one of the things that has become really clear after listening to the many, many lies that the Commonwealth attorney told, but what is clear is that Kenny Walker would not have been calling the police on the police. If he knew that the police was at the door, why would he call the police to talk to the police about the police? It doesn't make sense. And so we know what happened there is that they were intruders, and they entered her home, Breonna Taylor's home, without the proper identification. And now she is dead, and people have to be held accountable in this situation. So ladies, let's welcome Lanita Baker, Attorney Lanita Baker, who does not just, she's not just handling Breonna Taylor's case. Let's be clear that wherever Black folks live, there are multiple cases of police intrusion, police abuse, and the unfortunate relationship between Black folks and police is something that is an issue across this country. So she has multiple cases. Wow. This is the one today that she's joined us to talk about.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us what's been going on. Give us an understanding of what we're looking at. And I want you to talk about why Stand Your Ground does not apply in this situation when we saw it apply with George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, and we know that that law is also applicable in Louisville, Kentucky?
Yes. So first, this happened March 13th, 2020. I will say in terms of Kenny Walker, that is Breonna's boyfriend who was with her that night, who fired the shot. And as he said, a warning shot. Like he wanted whoever was trying to come in his house to know, we're armed, don't come in here, get away from my household. He fired a warning shot. His shot may or may not have hit the officer. An officer was shot, but with the police returning so many rounds in response to his one shot, I don't know that we can concede, absent ballistic evidence, that it's Kenny's gun that actually shot the officer. And he hit the charges against him were dismissed. However, with that caveat of, we're going to wait until the investigation is complete, and we may represent this case to the grand jury. So he's not out of the clear yet. He should be, but it's something that they're still trying to hold over him. Of, we may bring these charges back. They didn't wait for their investigation to be over to arrest him. He was arrested right away. He was in custody up until yesterday. There was a judge here, Judge Olu Stevens, who was brave enough to release him on home incarceration about a week after this happened, at the request of his attorney, because his criminal attorney presented testimony for an affidavit from a neighbor who said that the police did not announce themselves. And his attorney laid out the scenario of, this is a man who was protecting his home. And that is an African-American judge that let him out on home incarceration. No other judge would have done that. The FOP, the police union, they attacked the judge at the time that he did this. And that was the only real piece of media, local media, that we were getting before, I reached out to my friend attorney Ben Crump to get involved in this case, was naming Breonna as a suspect, her boyfriend Kenny as a suspect, the FOP going off on the judge. That is the extent of the media attention that was given here locally.
Before you go forward, because what we didn't discuss is that the person they were looking for
was already in custody
at that time, and he has not been in that residence in over 3 years.
Well, and they say that, like, the person that they were looking for was a friend of Breonna's, but not to the extent that the police tried to make it out to be. They lied on an affidavit. The police officers lied on the affidavit to get the search warrant for her home. They said that a postal inspector confirmed that the suspect was getting suspicious packages to her address, which is why the judge signed off on the search warrant. However, the postal inspector came in, and again, that search warrant was not released until this case drew national attention. I guess the police department thought that was gonna, let's release this so they can see she was holding drugs for people. Well, when they released that, the postal inspector came out and said, we didn't say that. No one called us to see if he was getting suspicious packages. And the one time, and it definitely not Louisville Metro Police, he said the one agency that did ask about anything with that address, we told them there was no suspicious packages going to that address. So the lies on the affidavit, not announcing themselves. Breonna Taylor, who was an ER tech working in hospitals at the beginning of COVID-19, should still be here, 26-year-old. She is, our future, and she was our future and what we want. She was working 2 jobs. This young lady was working, like, she was hustling to take care of herself. Her little sister lived with her, and I always say, like, thankfully her little sister was out of town when this happened, because her sister's bedroom was riddled with bullet holes. So there's no doubt that their mom would have lost both daughters that day.
I'm so glad that you're bringing stuff like this to light. I myself, I was incarcerated in 2008 for 12 and a half year sentence for bank fraud. where the two white males in my case who kind of instructed me on what to do and were seasoned in the game, they both got 2-year sentences each. And there were a lot of different things in my case, but particularly when you talked about the search warrant. In my case, they had also obtained a search warrant under false pretenses by giving, false information to the judge. And it wasn't until I got to go through the papers that I see that. So I'm glad you're bringing things like this to light. But the truth is, it happens in America almost every day. And generally they can get away with it because their goal is simply to get the warrant. They really don't care about how or what they have to do it. They just make up whatever needs to be made up in many cases to get it. So I'm glad you're bringing stuff like this to light.
Thank you.
Hi, Attorney Baker. How are you? I'm Yandy.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. My question is accountability. When do we, as the people that should enforce these laws, that can enforce our amendments and our rights, when are we allowed to hold these people accountable for the lies? When are we allowed to hold them accountable for breaking into our homes? And when do we say, like, it's time for these laws to change? What do you mean you can enter my home without letting me know who you are, and I'm not supposed to think you're a robber or a thief, and I have the right to carry a gun? Like, when are we allowed to say enough is enough? All these judges, all these police directors, it's time now.
Yeah.
Is there a way, where's the forum for us to join together and say no more?
Yeah. That is one of the things that we are pushing on behalf of Breonna Taylor's family. It's important to them that out of her death, that her death is not in vain.
Right.
And out of this incident, that we push for legislative reform. Only one state right now bans the use of no-knock warrants, and it's Oregon. In Florida, Oregon has a law. Florida, a Supreme Court has ruled, that you can't, they can't do no-knock warrants, but this should be a national thing. And and Breonna was not involved in trafficking narcotics. Even if she was, you cannot barge into people's home like that. So
exactly. And these are laws this is why I love organizations like Until Freedom, and I always support them, because the average person like myself, I don't know these laws. If someone was coming to break into my house and I was a licensed owner of a gun, I'm going to shoot as well. I don't know the laws that police have the right to come into my home. But organizations like Until Freedom, not only do they have people on the ground locally that know the laws locally, but they also join forces to fight against these laws that do not work for Black people. They just don't. Because what happens is we end up going to jail for things that others get off and live freely in Miami and Florida, have an amazing life.
Yeah.
Like the Zimmerman.
Yeah, I just think it's just crazy for me watching a young Black man get shot and it being said that this is self-defense, because you can have a gun and you can protect yourself when someone is coming at you. And then in this situation, someone comes into your home unannounced. Let's not even talk about the fact that they had the wrong address. And my thing is, can we just talk about the ball had to be dropped internally because someone did not do the proper investigative work to ensure that this person was still, how does someone not live in a place for over 2 years and you are still, where was the police work done? A ball was definitely dropped. And I just pray and I just hope that there is some type of lawsuit taken against this police department, even though money will never be able to replace her life. But not only does her family deserve to be compensated, but this man that they locked up, he is going to go through some serious trauma.
Right. Yeah. And we have filed our civil suit. We filed our civil suit in April. So, we're as we're pushing for reform, because that is definitely, how do we stop this from happening to anyone else? We are still aggressively pursuing our civil case against the involved officers for reasons, again, laws. We can't sue the city, you can't sue the police department, but we can sue those officers. And by way of suing the officers, it is the city is still being held accountable The police chief has been fired since a lot of the issues have been erased. He should have been fired a long time ago, but at least the pressure from this case finally, well, he's retiring. But the pressure from this case brought that about. So that's good.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there is the issue of people saying protesting doesn't work. People don't want to, engage so much in protests, but it's important to note that there have been wins, that the protesting, whether it be digitally, through the work that Sean King has been doing, and the local folks there organizing in Louisville, as well as Until Freedom, my organization, Color of Change, and a number of others have been working together. We did see that the police chief has had to resign. And yes, it is a retirement, but at the end of the day, they would have done nothing. Yeah. This happened on March 13th, which is months ago, 2 months ago, more than 2 months ago. And they would have done nothing if it had not been for the pressure from the ground. And then we saw yesterday that Kenny Walker's charges had been dismissed. And so the organizing does work.
It's clear that you have lies in that search warrant, and he had to sign a sworn affidavit in order to receive it. I know you said there's some civil action going on, but particularly to me, he's a murderer because he's responsible. His lie led to a whole case happening. So what are we doing with him in particular?
We have plans to go to bring that guy in. As I stated, we didn't get the warrant until the media, they released it to the media. So we had no idea who had sworn out the affidavit, what was in the affidavit, until the media got involved and the police. And it was an attempt for them to, because what they kept trying to say, oh, we think she's holding packages for him. Again, no drugs were found in her apartment. And it backfired on them, because the postal inspector came out and said, yeah, no, we didn't do that, so. But there are plans for that.
There's gotta be, and that was to Gandy. Gandy, you were saying, what can we do? How can we do it? What we can do is start exposing folks, right? So now you lie, right? So it's one thing for the chief to get fired, and that's very good. But I would like to see the person who had the audacity to put a lie like that in place on paper go. I want to know his name. I want to know his address. I want to know his relatives and where his family members live. And I feel like that's what social media is for. Exposing folks that do us wrong and unjustly. And we keep exposing folks, then we'll teach people how to treat us.
Absolutely. But you know what, for me, being able to say I retired, to tell your children I retired from the police department is very different than I lied and I got a young woman murdered that worked on the front line. That is what I mean by what can we do? That's not enough. That's not enough. You expose an address, you move, you expose your image is tainted for a year, then you go back on to living your life. As a people, to get this is why when I talk to organizations and to students, I'm always like, you have got to think of a career in politics and legislation so that we can.
And that's what I was going to say, voting. Yeah.
It's so important. That's all. That's really it. You have to change the law and change.
But you also have to set a tone, because police feel like it's okay. If nobody fights back, if you fight me, they're used to fighting people and people don't fight back. So we have to let them know every time you do something wrong to our people individually, okay? They had a little saying, we taking names and whooping butt. You understand what I'm saying? You got to individually start holding folks responsible. So before other officers think to make moves like that they will be put in real serious ridicule, because that's what they fear. They don't fear God. They don't care about, laws. They don't care about any of that stuff. What they fear is being exposed and media attention coming on individuals. Just this past week with the whole thing that was happening in New York City, and organizations like Until Freedom, they exposed the officer who was beating our folks up, and people started posting. Those officers will start thinking twice, because you got to know you can't keep doing this to our people. So I collectively, a lot of things need to happen, but yes, we should hold individuals responsible.
But I think, and to Yandy's point, and what I was saying, like with voting, we have to know, like the fact that the Commonwealth Attorney when I say the grand jury testimony presented against Kenny Walker to get him indicted was 2 minutes long, not one time in that 2-minute testimony by the officer did she mention Breonna Taylor. Did she mention that someone else was shot? Did she mention that the police returned over, 20 to 30 bullets into the home? Did she mention that bullets went through a different apartment? Did she mention that Kenny himself said, all she said was he admitted to shooting at the officer? She conveniently left out that he said he did not know that it was police officers at the door. That an elected Commonwealth attorney let testimony like that ride through, and he sat on that testimony to keep this young man in jail. House arrest is jail. You can't do anything, right? So that he was still incarcerated and pending had a charge pending of attempted murder, and that they're still trying to hold over his head. We have to pay attention to who we're electing to those offices, who we're electing to the judicial bench, because judges are signing off on these warrants. And those are the elections that go by the wayside that people don't really pay attention to. And in Kentucky, our judges don't run on a party, so they're not Republican or Democrat. So you're flipping a ballot over, and you're like, let's vote. Like, let's just pick a name. Like, but we need to know who these people are that we're electing, and inform voting, and know because those are in the state legislatures. How do we get this legislation changed with who we're electing to state government? Like, we need to know those things, because those are the elections that are going to have more impact on our day-to-day lives and I'm voting for president in the presidential race too, but those races have even more impact than those national races.
Now, Attorney Baker, what are the next steps for this case? What are you guys working on? And then how can folks who are not, within the state or aren't local, what can we be doing to, help you all succeed and to really see this case result the way that we need it to result?
So one, I know there is a rally on this coming Tuesday. We are still down. I said the chief is retiring. However, the 3 officers that we know fired into Breonna's house are still employed, are on administrative reassignment, being paid. They need to be fired. They need to be charged criminally, and either plead guilty or have their case presented to a jury. And so that's one of the next steps. But 2, we're pushing for legislative changes. So it's those phone calls to those local officials, and we're doing it on a local city level as well as a state, because our state General Assembly does not meet again until January. But we want changes. We can't let this go into January with them serving no-knock warrants.
Well, Attorney Baker, I appreciate you for coming and joining us today. There's a lot of work to be done, and certainly we're going to be in this from Until Freedom's perspective, and these ladies that talk over tea. We're going to be in this for the long haul. And I want to suggest to us, ladies, that we have Janiyah, which is Breonna Taylor's sister, to come back and join us. She's been fighting for her sister. Her aunts, Breonna Taylor's aunts also, they've been out there fighting, and they've been alone. And some days I wake up and feel like we failed them. We didn't know, so there was nothing that we could do. But still, the fact that we didn't know that a young woman had been killed in her home when the person that the police officers were actually looking for had been in custody for 4 hours is outrageous. It's outrageous. And it goes to show you, I mean, even in the Ahmaud Arbery situation, where we're going to be hearing from Attorney Lee Merritt a little bit later today, but even in that situation, the fact that Black people are being killed for months with no answers. The family had no answers, didn't know half of didn't know what really happened. And just to listen, Attorney Baker, to the story about how the officers had the audacity to ask Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, my namesake, they asked her when she showed up at the scene, Was there anyone else that may have wanted to kill your daughter, or anyone else that she may have had a problem with that could have wanted to take her life? As if they thought that this was someone else aside from their own officers who took this young lady's life. They sent her to the hospital back and forth, trying to find her daughter when her body was inside the home, and they knew it, but they sent her to the hospital anyway. This is how they treated a mother, a Black mother. And we cannot sit by and watch this happen. Attorney Crump, our friend and brother, Lanita, your co-counsel on this case, has said that while we are running for Ahmaud, we're out here, we're organizing for him, we must stand up for Breonna Taylor at the same time. And that's something that we're going to do. So thank you so much, Attorney Baker, for joining us. You're a beautiful, strong Black woman. We support you. You come to us anytime that you need us to back you up and to be there with you throughout this situation, not just Breonna Taylor, but all the cases that you work on. And be safe, because know that as you continue to fight these things that are on a national scale, the forces of evil will try to form against you, but we know that no weapon will prosper. So we love you, sister.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
To Black people who are losing their lives at the hands of police in these United States of America. You will meet more families today who came here to say that this is all connected, that what happened to Ahmaud Arbery is connected to what happened to George Floyd, and what happened to Breonna Taylor, and what happened to Tatiana Jefferson, and what happened to Sandra Bland, and to Elijah McClain, and to Tony McDade. We know this is all connected.